So it will go live. We'll give it a couple seconds to get up on. There we go. We are live. So welcome to the Rebel Roundtable. And my Rebel Roundtable is designed to be completely off script live discussion of all the things in the legal world that we wish we could change or that we wish people would change. And so I'm your host, Jen Lee, aka Rebel Esquire, and I joke that I'm officially in my superhero era, saving lawyers from saying, well, that's just how we've always done it, so why change it? And this is not scripted, it's live and no filters, no editing, and we're getting away from all that perfectionism that exists in the legal world. So my guest on my Rebel Roundtable today is a longtime colleague and friend, Diane Camacho. And Diane is the owner of DLCCS, which is her initials, I believe. I'll have her confirm that in a second. But she is a legal manager, and she's been doing it for more than 25 years and working with small firms and medium-sized firms on all the management operational issues. And lots of speaking on operations, IOSA, accounting, those fun things that we don't like to talk about as lawyers. And she teaches law office management at San Francisco State University. She helps attorneys, she helps staff become more efficient, and she thinks attorneys should practice law, not spend their time in the weeds trying to figure out how to run a business that we were never taught to do. So thank you for being here, Diane. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So give us a little bit about your background before we jump into something super controversial.
Super comfortable. Oh, well, I have spent my career working with attorneys, primarily managing law firms of all different sizes. So in 2013, I started this consulting company. The goal was to provide those high-level services to smaller firms that either can't afford them, don't need them full time, and just kind of give them some expert advice. And so it's evolved into pretty much anything to do with non-billable work. So IT, HR, facilities, all of that.
Lovely non-billable work that's out there. And so when you started doing this and you went into firms, what did you see as a big challenge? What are these firms facing for challenges?
Usually it's a feeling of being overwhelmed, not really knowing if what they're doing is really right. They don't get validation that they're doing things the right way, if there is a right way or a wrong way. So a lot of times I'll come in and they'll just say, what do you think, is this okay? They're kind of insecure about what they're doing, but they're attorneys. And so they're taught not to be insecure, right? And to make sure that they can certainly argue that they're right, whether they are or not. So it's the frustration, it's the hitting the wall, it's the I don't know what to do and I don't know who to talk to. And a lot of times your colleagues are very important and helpful, but sometimes you need somebody that has just a bigger breadth of experience.
And do you find that a lot of attorneys and as I talk to attorneys that go solo or spin off from a firm, that they keep trying to do the things that their old firm did? Do you see a lot of processes of well, that's how I did it at my old firm, so that's how I'm going to do it in this firm too?
Usually they leave a big firm because they want to do it differently. And they want to have more control, attorneys control people. So I wouldn't say that that's the norm. I would say, we want to do it differently. How should we do that, Diane? What can we do? We want to be more, we want to be no paper, and we want to be more nimble, and we don't want to have a lot of support expenses and things like that. So then, what are people doing? How are other people doing it, and that kind of thing.
Well, so one of the topics we had, because I always ask what's our topic for today, and it was talking about customizing software solutions, which sounds like either attorneys will blank out on it. What do you find with customized versus non-customized? What's your distinction there? What are you looking at for software?
Well, when you roll out software, and what I'm talking about is small firm software on the market now. So when you're rolling out software, it could be docketing software, or it could be a practice management, or whatever it is. The software company tells you how customizable it is and how easy it is to use and how you can do this and you can do that. But they don't tell you, for instance, they'll say, well, you can create custom fields. And you're
Hmm.
like, great, what would I do with a custom field? How would I use that in my practice? What does that mean in my practice? They don't get that from the folks that are rolling out their software.
Okay.
So they're getting this free rollout. So they're like, oh, we'll convert, we'll roll out, everything will be fine. You won't have to do anything. And then the attorneys and their staff and other attorneys are learning exactly what they need to do. So it's the first day
Hmm.
of rollout. They're learning exactly what they need to do. They need to enter time. They need to find a matter. They need to make a note. They need to do all of these very basic things. But the beauty of this new software is the way that you can automate things, the way that you can create forms and put in custom fields. So a custom field is something that you would put into a letter as maybe the regarding line, things like
Hmm.
that, where they don't ever get to that. And they get a video sent to them and says, "This, look at how easy it is. Just go to this video."
So Diane, that sounds great. I'd love to have all these things, but I often hear that's so complicated and it takes too much time and money to set that up.
Mhm.
What's the response to that then? How do you look at it in the long run?
Well, it is complicated. It is not easy, even though they say, "Oh, it's so user friendly." Well, it's user friendly to the people that program it, and that's it. It's not
Hmm.
user friendly to the rest of us. So my recommendation is you pay for it up front. You pay to have somebody do it for you and do it right. And maybe it's not the first day. Maybe you roll out the software and you wait 6 months and you say, okay, now we understand the software. Now we want to automate. And then you
Hmm.
get somebody in there like us or there's a lot of people that do it, and you pay the money to have it done. And then you use your software, and then you are more efficient and less frustrated. And you're not, the idea is not to continue doing the same thing over and over and over. I always do a letter that says, I want these 5 things from a new client. Automate it. Pulling it
Yep.
up and changing the name is not automation.
And it's a bit of a mindset shift because you have to go to I'm going to spend 5 hours on the front of this, creating, helping, working with the consultant, setting this up. But in the long run, it's going to save me, 200 staff hours a year in perpetuity, basically. So I think it's some of the mindset that we get stuck in I could show someone else how to do it. I could automate it, but I don't have time to do that. So we get stuck in this loop of we keep doing
Well,
it ourselves.
and the other thing is, with the amount of staff turnover that we're experiencing now, people don't stay long. You don't, if you get somebody for a couple of years that's in a staff position, you're happy. If you have things automated, things are going to be done the same when somebody else comes in. If you don't, they're going to pull up the old letter from 1920 and use that letter when you revised the letter in 2013. And that was the letter you wanted them to pull up and modify. Come on, we all know. We've all been there. We've all done it.
Yep. I always, my favorite thing to hear when I ever say, so can you give me a template or an example of this letter? And they're like, well, I had this case named John Smith from 1984, and I think I can pull up that. I'm like,
Mhm.
the new person, even training a new associate attorney or they're not going to know whatever case you had in 1984 or whatever it was before they were born, probably, and be able to do that. And so automating also takes stress, I think, off the owners of the firm
Mhm.
from having to answer all those same questions over and over again.
Absolutely. You have a binder or a PDF document that you can click to the right place that says, click this button and then this button and then this button. It has little pictures and they can walk through and they expect that too. The
Yeah.
younger generation doesn't figure things out the way we figured them out in my generation. There was never a manual or anything in running a law firm. You just started. But the younger generation is used to having things with instructions. That's what they're
Mhm.
used to. And that's what they're comfortable with. So they become less frustrated and you get what you want. And it just makes sense. And it's a lot of money, but is it,
But it's really not. Like you think
is
of like one
$5,000?
step of my stuff.
Yeah. Is that a lot? I don't know. It has to, it depends on you. If you have the time to do it, then learn how to do it and do it. But
Hmm.
most of the time you don't. When you're starting up your practice, you might have time to do it. But if you're somebody, especially people that are leaving bigger firms, we often help practice groups leave larger firms
Hmm.
and get set up. They're running a practice. They have clients. They can't worry about
And time.
their time. And normally the people that we help start up law firms have practices, and they don't have
Mhm.
time to do that.
Yes. And I also see some of the generational stuff you were just talking about, which tends to get a little controversial at times too, because when you're dealing with different generations, people have always done things different. And I see a lot of the older, not necessarily all of them, but often it's, well, I learned by making mistakes and someone just told me to figure it out. So that's what I tell new attorneys, new staff members to do. And I am seeing a bit of a revolution in that space where the documentation and there's tools out there for that. Do you have specific tools that you don't have to name exact software companies or anything like that, but do you have like outlining workflows and things like that as part of your process when you come into a firm?
Yes. Yeah, it's
Help them create that.
having a flow chart. This is what intake is. This is the flow chart. Now let's see what we can automate and then do the automation. And some of it can be and some of it can't be. And the automation never does what I want it to do completely. But what are you going to do? It gets you better. It gets you closer, and it gets you more consistent. And that's the whole thing. You don't want to worry about what they're saying on the phone when they're doing your
Right.
client intake. You want to know that they have a script. And if this happens, they go here. And if that happens, they go there. It's
Yes, exactly. You want to make sure that they know where to go and then it's efficient. You're most of the staff is going to be an hourly or salaried employee. It's not, and maybe they're billing by the hour, whole other discussion that we could have entire
yeah.
hours on how to get rid of the hourly billing. But you want them to be efficient to be able to handle more and more work, and using automations does that. I think it
Hmm.
creates a lot of that efficiency that's out there.
Hmm.
Um, what what are some of the outdated things you see firms doing right now? What do you wish they would all be like, okay, can we just throw that away?
It's when they've implemented software and they're still doing the non-software work.
Mm,
So they've implemented this entire, well, just keep with intake because that's really big
yeah.
for small firms. They created this automated way to do intake and to distribute information and to have the conflicts checked and all of that kind of stuff. Yet they're still handwriting a form and then typing it into the computer and then circulating that form in paper to each attorney to have them check it off when the attorney could go into the software and check it off. Um, that kind of stuff is, and that normally is from long-term employees
Hmm.
because the long-term employees are comfortable with that. They're nervous about the software. They don't trust the software. So they put it all in there, but they're doing in behind the scenes, they're doing their stuff exactly the same way they've always done it. And that's frustrating.
It is. And that change management piece, I think, comes in there too, is how do you implement that and how do you create that new system without them falling back on the old paper and the old workflow and not trusting it. So
Mhm.
interesting.
Mhm.
Um, what is your viewpoint on I, so my just to throw it out there, there isn't a software practice management software out there that does everything that we wish it would. There
Mhm.
isn't anything out there. Do you find that there are features that are missing from all of them? Do you wish they would do something that none of them do? And I throw like random questions at you
I
because I'm always
I
like, how would I create the best software?
I wish that they um, all had logical reports for really understanding profitability and realization.
Yeah.
And I wish their automation was the way I think. And I don't know if it's not or whatever, but I just it's frustrating when they're like, oh, you can automate this process. Well, you can automate this process if you don't do that. Or you can automate this piece of the process, but otherwise it's a checklist. That's what I'm going through now. And that's frustrating to me, but it's not frustrating enough for me to spend the time to write software.
Right. And that's the end result is like, wait, should I write something to do this? And I'm like, no, that's not my area of expertise. But
Yeah.
that's always been my thing too. I jump from software to software because I'm like, I'm not super loyal to software. And I'm always trying to find one that does everything I want it to. I wish they would do a better job at tracking referrals and like the pipeline of business, sometimes reporting
Hmm.
it ties into that too. So that's always been my wish for software.
Yeah, and some of them do track it very well, but the reporting is stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like that doesn't tell me what I want to know. Yeah.
So tell me, have you ever run across a firm, no names, of course, that they refuse to implement any kind of case management software? They keep trying to do it with Excel spreadsheets and Outlook or Google Docs or something like that. Do you run across those?
Mhm, mhm. Not a
Yeah.
lot of them, not a lot of them, but we have, and they want us to help them automate what they're doing with 5 different programs, and then they justify why they're using those 5 different programs. So it's like, if it's working for you, it's working for you. Everything
Right.
doesn't have to change.
Right.
Don't act like you want to change, but really not want to change. It's we go in there and we give advice and we make suggestions, and they just, oh, well, we can't do that and we can't do that. And this isn't going to work because of this. It's like, okay, then I'll go home and continue doing what you're doing and I'll work with somebody else. It's, um, that gets frustrating, but it's very difficult to say, you don't really want my help. You don't really want to make changes. So I'm going to disengage from this arrangement, and you can, because you want to help.
Yeah. And that's what I always say. Like, we're not for everybody. The services that we do when we work with law firms, they have to be ready to actually make some changes.
Mhm,
So it's okay. They're just not ready quite yet.
mhm.
Um, what do you see kind of as the aha moment sometimes when people are ready to make that change? Is there usually some kind of light bulb that goes off?
I wouldn't call it, I would call it pleasantly surprised,
Okay.
more so than a light bulb, because I think we all have these visions of all these things that technology can do for us. So it's not a light bulb, it's more of like, oh, it did it. That's great. Or, oh, I like that, or um, something like that, more than, yeah.
Do you ever find that showing sometimes convinces them? Like if you showed them how the process could be, that'll convince them.
Mhm.
I get a lot of pushback sometimes on things that I want that I think are technically cool,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to explain it, but then it's hard for people to visualize that. Then you show them, they're like, "Oh, that's really easy," and I'm like, oh, "That's what I've been saying," but
Yeah.
you have to do the
Yeah.
show and tell.
It's easy once you get it set up properly.
Right, right, and then going through the whole setup process.
And then people change software because the software that they had didn't do what they wanted. Well, it did. You just didn't know how to do it. And then the new software said, well, we can do it, even though they can't. And it's the same situation. You still have to learn how to do it. You still have to program it.
Right, you still have to have that workflow. You have to know what you wanted to do and be able to set it up to do that. So I think we all want the box. Hand me the box of how my firm runs, and then we don't want to mess with the under the hood and figure out what to do. And we don't have to be programmers. Other people will do that, but you have to be
And there
willing
are there
to,
are companies that will set your firm up like that.
yeah,
We just
yeah,
don't happen to be one of them.
right. And there's all kinds of firms out there that will do all kinds of things, but
Mhm.
it's either you pay the money to do it or you take the time to learn how to do it yourself. It's not something that can just be, oh, we're going to implement a software today and this is how it's going to work.
Mhm. Mhm.
What else is going on out there as we wrap with this fun discussion in software world, or anything else that with what you help with? Anything new and exciting?
New and exciting. Um, Not new and exciting, and anything I bring up will be another 20 or 30-minute discussion. Um, I think that more and more people with the problems that they're having staffing their firms, are becoming more open to spending a little bit of money in order to have some of these things happen, because the attorneys that I know are very, very busy and are feeling really overwhelmed just trying to get the client work done.
And I think some of it's lifestyle too. All of these softwares and the solutions that you're talking about improve the lifestyle of the owners and the attorneys of the firm and support staff too.
Mhm.
But as a firm owner, it can be very overwhelming.
Mhm.
And you end up working 80 hours a week when you could be working 35 hours a week or something like that.
Right,
So,
right. And I always say work-life balance means you're working less. So in order to
right.
work less, you have to do things differently.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's a good point. You can't keep doing the same things and expect anything to change regarding your work-life balance. So
Mhm.
that's a very good point.
Mhm.
So I do have a fun question for you. I always ask people, what's your go-to rebellious anthem? What song do you put on when you need to rebel against whatever's going on out there?
I like Shania Twain, Man, I Feel Like a Woman.
A good one. It's got
Just
a
kind
good
of,
opening beat to it. Yep.
it's got a good opening beat and it's really powerful for women and you can belt it out.
Yep.
That's my choice.
Great choice. So we will add that to the Rebel Roundtable Spotify list so people
Thanks.
can have our rebellious anthems out there whenever they need
Oh,
some motivation. We'll add that to our list and credit
where
you
do I
for
find
that.
the list?
It's on Spotify. I will
Oh, okay. And
send
is
you the
it
link to it.
Rebel Esquire?
The Rebel Roundtable. Yep. Yep.
Oh, cool. I'll look for it.
Yep. And then tell us how you can be reached and if someone wants
Oh,
to work with you and all that information. How do we find you?
sure. My website is dlccs.com. And on there, you can email for a free 30-minute consultation or just a question. And they come to myself and my trusty assistant. And there's a phone number on there. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on YouTube.
Okay.
Can
You're all over the place.
all over the place. Yeah,
Sounds good. And I think you do a lot of webinars too, don't you? If I'm not
I do.
mistaken.
I do a lot of webinars. We just finished up our trust accounting webinar,
Okay.
and we've done that, yeah, I think 3 times in California and across the country, and because of the MCLE stuff coming up. And then our next webinar, I think, is in a couple of weeks or a month, and that is 10 ways that attorneys lose big money. And so it's talking about money, and that's gotten really good reviews from people. And then I speak at bar associations and other attorney groups all the
Very
time.
good. So
Yeah.
reach out to Diane for speaking and for all kinds of things. They do great assessments too. I would like to do a quick plug for your assessments because sometimes
Thank
people
you.
don't know where to start. And
Yes.
Diane does great assessments on that. So reach out to Diane. Thank you for being on the Rebel Roundtable on
Thanks
this
for
Friday
having me.
morning.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap. So if you're ready to ditch the status quo and embrace actually loving practicing law, then join us for the Rebel Roundtable every Friday morning at 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, just say no to the traditional way of doing things.